Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, broadcasting to all time zones. It is now 8 o'clock and we're on the third of our introductions. We've done our introduction to the IT Essentials, we've done our introduction to the CCNA 2, and we're now on our introduction to Cisco's latest, and many would say greatest course, which is the CCNA CyberOps. So welcome to the free CCNA. Oh, I've got too many C's in there. Look at that. Let's just get rid of one of those C's. That's better. Welcome to the free CCNA CyberOps instructor training. I've noticed we've got 13 people live joining us already, which is good. That number's slowly increasing. So this is our introduction, or in other words, so what do you need to do in order to study this course? Mr. Coding Lion, hello again. Yes, I do feel like the marathon man, I must admit. Okay, no, this is good, this is good. Bring it on, bring it on. The more training the better, that's what I always say. Okay, so, sounds good. Video's good. Let's get into this little introduction. As I say, this is purely an introductory session. We won't be doing any actual teaching today. The teaching starts next Monday. So rather than use up too much of our evening or morning, depending on what time zone you're in, we'll get moving along. Okay, so session contents. Quick introduction. Who is your instructor? Well, that's me. Study calendar. We'll have a little look at the class on the Cisco Networking Academy website. We'll have a very brief talk about planning of your time and assessment. What we will do for you as the Cisco Academy Support Center, the Open University Cisco Academy Support Center. What resources are also available to help, and any useful resources for teaching. And my old dyslexia is certainly creeping in today, isn't it? Any useful resources for teaching. Wonderful job. Okay. Oh, I can see some names I recognise. Hello, Dave Cook. Hope you're well. I can see quite a few names actually from previous courses. This is excellent. Carl's been with me all night. My wife will be jealous. Hopefully not. Okay, so here we go then. Right, let's start the introduction up. Right, you are now entering the wonderful world of distance learning, or re-entering it in many cases. So hello and welcome. It's wonderful to have you on the course. You will indeed be studying by yourself. This is a self-paced study session, distance learning. However, you are part of a much larger community. So amazingly enough, we have enrolled a total of 902 people in this Cisco CCNA CyberOps course. I think we've got about 600 on the IT Essentials and about 700 and something on the Cisco CCNA 2. So all said and done, we've got about 12,000, it's not 12,000, goodness me, 2,000 students enrolled. Now, there will be a few bumps and possibly slightly more on the CCNA CyberOps than on the other two, because this is actually the first time we've tried to do a massive distance learning Cisco CCNA CyberOps course, but we will get there. We promise we will make it work. Who is your instructor? Well, there you go. Who is your instructor? I am your instructor. Hello everybody. Okay, I have been a Cisco instructor for a rather long time. In fact, I've been an instructor with Cisco Networking Academy since the year 2001. I've taught on CCNA routing and switching, the IT Essentials as well, which is not on that list, the CCNA Security, CCNA CyberOps, and the CCNP. And I must say, it is one of the most interesting and most nicely put together courses. The CCNA CyberOps It was an absolute pleasure to be on the pilot course, the pilot instructor training course for the CCNA CyberOps. I spent quite a lot of time with Andrew Smith and a few other people who were on the pilot course, and it was one of the most fascinating courses that I've actually done with Cisco. It's a very well thought out course, so I hope you will enjoy it as much as I did. My interests, computer networking and Linux, that goes without saying. I do rather like astronomy. Got a couple of telescopes in the conservatory. One of them is actually got little motors on, so it tracks the stars as the Earth spins round. I've got a little MCO lathe and an MCO CNC milling machine in the garage, and no room whatsoever for the car. The car is relegated to the driveway. UK training manager for the World Skills IT Network Systems Administration competition, or Skill 39 as it's known. What we do is we every 2 years we have a competition somewhere very, very nice in the world. So far I've been to Germany, Leipzig, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Abu Dhabi and Kazan in Russia, and we bring together the finest 16 to 21-year-old students from many countries, and then they basically compete against each other to prove who is the best IT network systems administrator. 4 days of competition, 4.5 to 5 hours a day. Cisco, Microsoft, Linux, troubleshooting, secret challenges, really heavy stuff, to be fair. Voice over IPs in there, all kinds of things, and they have no access to books, notes or the internet, which is the most amazing bit of all, really. It's all up there in between the ears. Remarkable. So I'm very privileged to be in that position, and yes, I am indeed a geek and very proud of it. So I'm sure there's quite a few people who have tuned in tonight who probably, in fairness, are also geeks. Let's have a little look at the study calendar. So here is the study calendar. There is a study calendar on your Cisco CCNA CyberOps class on the Networking Academy website. However, what I've done is I've kind of tidied it up a little bit here, so as we're just looking at the CCNA CyberOps, the one on the website has the IT Essentials, the CCNA 2 and the CyberOps on it. You will see that we have 13 chapters to work our way through. We'll do chapters 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then we will have a break on the 21st of October, and then we'll start back up again with chapters 6 all the way through to chapter 13 before we have a 2-week break around the Christmas break, and then we'll be on to the skills based assessments and the finals, and accrediting you as fully qualified Cisco CCNA CyberOps instructors, which is of course precisely what you will be. Okay, if we have a little look at these chapters, there's some really good stuff in here. The Security Operations Center, looking at the Windows operating system, the Linux operating system, network protocols and services, network infrastructure, which is spelt wrong, and it wasn't me this time, it was Andrew. Principles of network security, network attacks, a deeper look, protecting the network, crypto. I think Andrew's probably shortened that very slightly. Endpoint security analysis, security monitoring, intrusion data analysis, and incident response handling. There is some really great stuff on this course. Let's pull up this slide. This is an interesting slide, taken directly from Cisco, gives you a better idea of the course structure. So, strictly speaking, cybersecurity in the Security Operations Center is just the introduction. We get into the nitty-gritty when we start looking at the operating systems. We'll be looking at the Windows operating system, and of course you need to know your operating systems. So when we look at the Windows operating system, we'll be looking at the history of the Windows operating systems, the architecture and the operation. We'll look at the administration of the Windows operating system, Windows configuration and monitoring, Windows security. We'll then move on and we'll look at the Linux operating system. Now the Linux operating system is absolutely critical for anybody who wants to work in the field of security, whether that be network security, cybersecurity, intrusion prevention, penetration testing. Huge amount of this revolves around Linux. Linux is an exceptionally powerful, flexible, open source operating system, and there are literally tens of thousands of applications, very powerful applications, which have been written for the Linux operating system. So if you're interested in getting into teaching security or potentially working in the security environment, you've got to know Linux. So we will be looking at an overview of the Linux operating system, so the basics, working with the Linux shell. We'll look at Linux servers and clients. We'll look a bit deeper into Linux administration, so basic server administration. We'll look at the file system in some detail. We'll look at hosts, Linux hosts, working with the graphical user interface and working on a Linux host. And then we'll move on to Chapter 4. And in Chapter 4, this is really Cisco CCNA routing and switching knowledge. So if you've done the Cisco CCNA routing and switching modules, that will hold you in very good stead. We will be looking at network protocols and services, so we'll be looking at the protocols themselves, network communication protocols, client server, tracing routes. We'll be looking at all the different types of protocols, focusing on the TCP/IP protocol suite, the fundamentals: unicast, multicast, broadcast, reference models, addressing systems. We're looking at IPv4, IPv6, default gateways, connectivity verification using ICMP, ping, traceroute, the address resolution protocol, MAC addresses, IP addresses, how ARP works. We'll look at the transport layer. We'll look at TCP and UDP. We'll look at the operation of the transport layer and various ports, very useful for firewalling. We'll look at network services, so we'll look at things like, for instance, DHCP, the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, that can automatically assign your IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, DNS server, and much more. We'll look at DNS, we'll look at network address translation, we'll look at file transfer and sharing services, email, HTTP and HTTPS. All of these things are fundamental knowledge for security. There's so many different ways of attacking systems which rely on vulnerabilities in protocols and services. We'll look at the network infrastructure in Chapter 5. So again, this is networking fundamentals, this is Cisco CCNA knowledge. We'll look at network communication devices, so end devices, routers, switches, wireless communication devices. We'll look at security devices, such as firewalls, packet filtering firewalls, stateful firewalls, next generation firewalls. We'll be working our way through. Then we drop into what we would say is the real cybersecurity fundamentals. So this is starting at Chapter 6, where we'll look at principles of network security. This is very interesting. So we'll be looking at attackers and their tools. We'll be looking at common attacks, common threats and attacks, malware, various different forms of malware, viruses, Trojan horses, worms, ransomware, network attacks. You know, the way we go about actually attacking the network, starting off with their reconnaissance attacks, access attacks, social engineering, phishing. And then what we'll do is we'll move into network attacks and actually have a deeper look at network attacks. We'll look at network monitoring tools. We'll also then look at protecting the network. So we'll look at how we actually understand the defense of a network. Defense in depth. So we'll look at the differences between assets, vulnerabilities and threats, how we identify assets, vulnerabilities and threats. We'll look at what's known as the security onion. Absolutely wonderful way of doing that using a virtual machine. We'll look at access control. We'll look at threat intelligence. And then we move on to Chapter 9, which Andrew called crypto, or to use its full term, cryptography and public key infrastructure. Fascinating. absolutely fascinating chapter. So we'll look at what cryptography is. We'll also look at cryptology as well as cryptography and cryptanalysis. We'll look at not only confidentiality through encryption, but we'll also look at integrity and authenticity. So we'll be looking at MD5 and SHA and hashing algorithms. We'll look at public key infrastructure. And then the final part of the actual cybersecurity fundamentals, which will be endpoint security analysis. We'll be looking at endpoint protection, host-based intrusion protection, for instance. We'll be looking at vulnerability assessments. So we'll look at things like, for instance, the CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, and compliance frameworks, how to make sure that we have secure device management. And then we move on to the last three chapters. And the last three chapters pivot around cybersecurity operations. And this is really nice stuff. This is new stuff now. So whereas before, the operating systems, yes, a lot of that was in things like IT Essentials, Linux Essentials. The network protocols would have been in the CCNA routing and switching. Some of the cybersecurity fundamentals you would find in Cybersecurity Essentials and the CCNA Security, if you happen to have done those courses. But the cybersecurity operations, this is absolutely new stuff, and fascinating it is too. Okay, so I won't go through any of that in any more detail because we'll be covering that as we move forward. If we actually have a little look at the CCNA CyberOps course overview itself, you can see that it introduces core security concepts and skills. So these are required in order to monitor, detect, analyze and respond to cybercrime, cyber espionage, insider threats, advanced persistent threats and so on. This is very big business. This is without doubt something that we need lots and lots and lots of students trained in. And in order to get lots of students trained in these technical skills, we need lots of instructors trained in these technical skills. So that's precisely why, as the Open University Cisco Academy Support Center, we're laying on these free courses. Wherever you are in the world, we want you guys and girls to get these courses behind you, become fully accredited instructors, and get out there teaching students and making our economies and our businesses a much safer place. So learning components, 13 chapters. We've got quizzes which are optional. We've got chapter exams which are not optional. We would expect that you would do 75% or 3/4 of all the chapter exams. We've got terms and concept practice Quizlets which are very, very useful. There's lots of interactive activities built into the CCNA CyberOps. This is quite technical stuff. Those interactive activities are very, very well worth doing. There's no less than 45 hands-on labs. 27 of those use virtual machines, and this is Oracle VirtualBox. There's even packet tracer activities. Okay. So these are all geared up towards taking 2 exams in order to gain the Cisco CCNA CyberOps commercial certification. Those exams being 210, 250, their security fundamentals, and 210, 255, security operations. Okay, now obviously, in order to teach this subject, you don't have to have the commercial certification. You just need to be an accredited instructor. So if you work hard through the course and you become an accredited instructor at the end of this course, you can teach the CCNA CyberOps. However, that said, it's very, very well worth getting that certification. Personally, if I'm teaching a subject, I always like to have the commercial certification for that subject. It's great as far as students are concerned. If a student turns around to you and actually asks a question about the commercial certification, you can answer that as well. Okay, so we'll have a very quick look at the course on NetAcad. Okay, so I'm logged into NetAcad, the Open University Instructor Training Center, and we're looking at the one in the middle, CCNA Cybersecurity Operations. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to launch that course. Hopefully we don't get too much of a delay because I'm streaming at the moment. That was relatively quick. Okay, we've got a link straight through to the course materials. We've got a link to the study calendar. I think that's actually all three. It's combined IT Essentials, CCNA Module 2 and CCNA CyberOps. And we've got a link to the skills-based assessment. So have a little look at all of these. Do whatever you do, have a little look at the README. In fact, I'll bring the README up now. Okay, so hi, hola, hello, and welcome. Now, Andrew's tapped in some very useful information here. Once you are deemed complete, we will pass out everybody from the 27th of January 2020. Seems like a long way away, doesn't it? The 27th of January 2020, but that will go very, very quickly. Please do study the study calendar, and please watch the deadlines. Unfortunately, when we're running courses with as many students on as this, and multiple courses as well, we have to make sure that a deadline is a deadline. So please take great care to notice what the deadlines are and make sure that you have completed the tasks before those deadlines, because it's virtually impossible to extend them. Okay, now in order to pass this module, pass this course, and become an accredited instructor, you must complete the chapters. All of the chapters. Okay? Yeah, in this particular case, what we want you to do is, well, I'll get onto that in a moment, but all the chapters, complete the skills-based assessment and then email it in according to the instructions in the SBA section. So we'll have a little look at the SBA section shortly, and complete the final exam. Now the final exam passing mark is 70% or higher. Okay. Now if you're doing the chapters and you're getting 70-80% in all of the end of chapter assessments, chances are when you come to do the final exam, getting 70% is not going to be too much trouble. Those end of chapter assessments are there for a very good reason. They're there to gauge your progress, to make sure that you have actually taken in the material that's in the chapter. So read very carefully through the online chapter material. Do any lab exercises that are required, especially the ones in the virtual machines in the later chapters, because they are critical in those later chapters to do those virtual machine labs using the security onion. Watch the live broadcast. If you can't watch the live broadcast, watch the recorded session. Every single live Facebook broadcast will be recorded, so don't worry about missing it. If you do miss it for any reason, work gets in the way, which is often the case, it's not a problem, because all the Facebook live broadcasts will be recorded and they'll be up on the OU ASC Facebook site. When everything's done, email the Open University, so open.university.cisco@gmail, with a subject Silent CyberOps completed. Please give us your full name as it appears in the gradebook. Okay. Now, the skills-based assessment is based on one of the virtual machines. So we've got the Security Onion skills-based assessment virtual machine and the SBA document. These can be downloaded directly from Andrew's Google Drive account. There is a link here. Now please be patient, because it comes across as a VirtualBox OVA file, and an OVA file is an image file for VirtualBox, pre-built, and it's big. We're talking about 3 GB in size. So Andrew's Google Box Drive account is going to probably be on meltdown, but we will pass you if we are satisfied that you've successfully completed at least 80% of the skills-based assessment. And please include a Word document, clear proof, including screenshots. Okay. Send your Word document to open.university.cisco@gmail.com. Okay, so the skills-based assessment will be completed using Oracle VirtualBox, using the Security Onion SBA, and the documentation can be found in Andrew's Google Drive account. You will need to download the OVA. It's a big file, so it will take a while, and then complete the skills-based assessment to at least 80%. So, theory final exam, skills-based assessment, and away you go. Okay, we have the study calendar, and if I click next one more time, we have some information regarding your first time in the course. Worth having a quick look through that. I'll skip through the next page and it should take us on to, yes, of course, we have the ethical hacking statement. Because of the nature of this course, this is not something you would have seen on the IT Essentials or the CCNA courses, but because of the nature of this course, we need to put in here an ethical hacking statement. We can click next and we can learn about the virtual machine lab environment. The virtual machine lab, let me see, I wonder whether I can show you that. I'll show you what that looks like. I think we might be able to do that. No, hold on a second. There we go. Great. Okay, so what we have is we have virtual machine environment. It consists of actually 3 virtual machines linked together. We have a security onion, which works as a firewall and a router. This is a very clever piece of kit. Using this, we can monitor, we can log, we can see alerts. We have a CyberOps workstation as an end host. We have Kali Linux. Many people are probably familiar with Kali Linux. It's a network security auditing distribution which has probably in excess of 700 security auditing tools on there. All the good stuff. So we're talking about things like, for instance, just a few to name a few: Nmap, Wireshark, NetAcad, Aircrack, BlueSnarfer. There's absolutely, you could probably spend 2 years trying out every single tool that is installed on Kali Linux. And then what we have in the DMZ, we also have a vulnerable server. So this is an Ubuntu machine, I do believe, and it's a vulnerable server. And all of this runs in VirtualBox. So you can play with this to your heart's content and you won't do any damage whatsoever to your main computer system. And of course, when you're teaching this in a school or a college, this can be installed in VirtualBox, and it will hopefully mean that your network manager won't have quite so many worries about you teaching a security course. So what is Oracle VirtualBox? I would imagine most people know, but nevertheless, Oracle VirtualBox is a free, open source, cross-platform virtualization software, and it's used throughout the Cisco CCNA CyberOps course. It can be installed on Windows, on Linux, on the Mac OS X, and even on Solaris computers. Its base license is under the what's known as the GNU General Public License version 2, and there is also an extension pack available for personal use, which adds additional capabilities to VirtualBox. VirtualBox can be I'll show you where we can download VirtualBox in a little while, actually. We have a CyberOps workstation, and this is a custom-built virtual machine based on Arch Linux, and that virtual machine, the CyberOps workstation, is used in most of the labs in the course. We also have 3 more virtual machines, and these are used in later labs, pretty much mostly from chapter 10, 11 onwards. And they are used for launching exploits and reviewing alerts and log messages generated during those exploits. We have the vulnerable server, the Metasploitable server. This is an intentionally vulnerable Linux virtual machine, and it's used to conduct security training, test security tools, and practice penetration techniques. The Kali Linux virtual machine will act as an attacker, and it will be used to exploit the vulnerabilities that are on the metasploitable vulnerable server. And in the middle there, tying everything together, is the Security Onion virtual machine, and this is used for network security monitoring, intrusion detection and log management. Okay, where do you get Oracle VirtualBox? Well, where you get pretty much anything. It's just a quick case of going across to Google. So let's see what we could do on here. If I bring up Google, it's simply a case of tapping in Oracle VirtualBox and finding the downloads page. Okay, so I would imagine most people will probably be running Windows. So we've got the downloads for Windows hosts. So we can download those. Latest version is 6.012, etc, etc, etc. I won't download that, obviously. Mac OS 10, Linux distributions. Now for Linux distributions you may well find that the common versions of Linux, the common distributions like Ubuntu and Debian, Fedora, they do have VirtualBox packages here, and they also tell you how to go about installing them using package management systems. I'm actually using a version of Linux known as Manjaro, and in Manjaro it's based on Arch Linux. It's a very straightforward way to install VirtualBox. Let me see if I can show you. In fact, if you're a Linux user and you haven't tried Manjaro, I definitely recommend it. It's an extremely fast and stable version of Linux. Okay. My system's up to date. I like to try to keep it up to date if I can. So all I've done is I've gone to the menu, I found my software updater, and in there I should be able to just tap in Oracle VirtualBox, and you'll notice it's already installed because I've got a remove button on there. But in my case, using Manjaro, it was simply a case of tapping in VirtualBox, clicking on install, tapping in my password, and boom. Bob is your uncle, VirtualBox is installed. With Windows it's even easier. Next, 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 finish. Okay. Bear in mind, however, you will require on your computer at least 8 GB of RAM, because what you are running is you are running no less than 4 virtual machines, and all 4 virtual machines, when they're running simultaneously, require 6.5 GB of RAM, and that only leaves 1.5 GB of RAM over for the host operating system. Okay, and as you probably know, Windows doesn't like to run in 1.5 GB of RAM particularly well. You might get away with it on some versions of Linux, but even with 8 GB of RAM, it's still going to be a little bit slow, but it will run in 8 GB of RAM. Okay. I'm pretty lucky because my computer that I'm running at the moment, this is the one that I'm using to record the videos. As I said, it's a Manjaro Linux machine, and it's quite a powerful system. It's actually a laptop, but it's an extremely powerful laptop. Let's see if I can give you some idea. If I cat the CPU info file in the prop folder, in fact, let's just put that through grep to look for, what should we look for? Core, probably. There we go. You'll notice that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 cores on this system. So I've got 12 cores running at 3.4 gigahertz. 6 of those cores are physical cores, 6 are virtual cores. It's Intel i7 Extreme processor, so there's a lot of processing power there, and also we've got quite a lot of RAM. I've got 32 gig of RAM here. Now, needless to say, this runs our virtual machines like there's no problem whatsoever. What you will need is you will need at least 8 gig of RAM, 16, fantastic if you've got 16. You'll need a reasonably powerful processor as well. And I don't know about you, but if you're running virtual machines and you want to run a lot of virtual machines, I always find an SSD drive is useful too. I'm not trying to put anybody off here, but you want to have a reasonable specification computer in order to run these virtual machines. 8 gig of RAM, maybe an i5. Make sure that your virtualization extensions are switched on in the BIOS, and reasonably fast hard drive, mechanical hard drive, preferably an SSD, and you'll be ready to go. Okay, so so for chapters 1 to 10, we generally only use a single VM, so we'll be using the CyberOps workstation, whereas for chapters 11 to 13, where it gets really interesting, we're going to be using multiple VMs. So we'll have a system that's being attacked, an attacker, a system that's doing the monitoring. It's a complete sandboxed environment, and a lot of fun. Okay, there are some optional resources. I'll let you have a little look through that. And these are the NDG CCNA CyberOps online labs. Again, this is not required for the course. It's just some optional resources which can be used. And that's what I was looking for. So, chapter 1. Now, got to be aware here that most of the people who have joined us on this CCNA CyberOps module will have studied Cisco before, either the IT Essentials or the CCNA, or possibly even higher than that. However, I am aware that there are still a few people who this could be their first ever introduction to Cisco. So I'll try not to go through it too fast. All of the information required to study the course is on the online curriculum, and the online curriculum we've just accessed through your class. This is the online curriculum. On the right hand side you'll have the text, and on the left hand side you'll have either pictures, videos, or lab activities of some sort. We can navigate through the curriculum using the left and right buttons. So again, no need for books, all the information's here. Actually, I'm quite surprised how quickly that's working, considering that we're streaming at the moment as well. This is a useful part. Chapter 1.11.14, so 1.1.14, we've got a lab installing the CyberOps workstation virtual machine. Okay, if I click on that lab, it will give you all the information required in order to prepare your personal computer for virtualization. So the installation of Oracle VirtualBox. Again, like I say, make sure that your processor has the hardware virtualization flags enabled in the BIOS. Where to download, how to start up the machine, usernames, passwords, etc. So you can see, nice, succinct document. And again, case studies. So you can see there's a lot of information, there's a lot of material, and all that material can be accessed through this portal, the CCNA Cybersecurity Operations online curriculum, in your CCNA CyberOps class. Okay, I'm not going to skip through every single one of these because we would be here for about 12 hours if I did that, but it's possible to bookmark a page. We can go back to our previous bookmarks. There is a course index. This is useful, so we can skip very quickly to anywhere we like in the curriculum. Let's have a little look. Let's have a look at some of the Linux stuff. The Linux shell, basic commands, here we go. Okay, so we've got the move command, chmod, change mode in other words, so that changes the file permissions, chown, change owner, dd, very useful for copying data from input to output. dd is used to, for instance, flash operating systems onto secure digital cards. So if you've got a Raspberry Pi and you need to put a Raspberry and operating system onto it from a Linux machine, you'd generally use dd. Now, while I was in the course index, you'll notice there are packet tracer labs. Not very many in here, but there are some. We've also got a lab index. So this will quickly zero in on just the labs. And we've got a video index. And there's some great videos in the CCNA CyberOps. They're very interesting to look at. And I would definitely recommend having a good look through some of these videos. Okay, return back to the class at any time by hitting the return back to class button. So for most people that would have been very familiar stuff, just the way you'd have done it on your Cisco CCNA course or your IT Essentials course. But like I say, there will be a certain number of people on the module who have probably never used Cisco before, a Cisco Networking Academy before, so that's always useful stuff. Okay, now bear with me 1 second whilst I get back to the presentation. We're here. Okay, so usual stuff, make sure that you plan your time well. This is self-study, and with any self-study course you need to be disciplined. Okay, there's nobody standing over you telling you what to do and when. You have to make sure that you do all that yourself. Okay, so you should expect to spend at least 3 to 5 hours per week studying. So 3 to 5 hours per week reading through the online curriculum, doing lab exercises, playing around with the virtual machines, and doing the end of chapter tests. Always try to take the end of chapter exam after you've studied that relevant chapter. So what we're going to aim for is we're going to aim for doing 1 chapter a week. Once you've read through the online curriculum material, done the labs, take the end of chapter assessment while it's still fresh in your mind. Study tips, definitely as you're going along, take notes, copy and paste any relevant clever bits into Notepad or Word. Keep a log of what you've done so as you don't lose your place. Make a note of where you've left off. If you're on a roll, if you find any particular chapter relatively straightforward and you move through it quicker than you thought you did, why not see if you can get a little bit ahead? It's always nice to have that buffer by being perhaps a chapter ahead of where you should be in the study calendar, because you never know when you might need to use that buffer. If you're tired, stop. Yeah, if you're really tired, the information is not going to go in. Have a stop, have a rest, have a relax, come back at a later date. Yeah, it's very difficult to absorb hard technical information when you're really, really tired. Take breaks, drink plenty, play some music if that was what works for you. I always study in silence if I can, but I know Andrew likes to listen to rather loud music. It is a self-paced course, so don't panic if you think others are ahead of you. This is not a sprint, it's more of a marathon. Yep, it doesn't matter where anybody else is on the course, you just need to make sure that you look after your time schedule. Okay, so the quizzes are optional, chapter exams are essential, as these will prepare you for the final examination. You can take the chapter exams whenever you like. They're on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, continuously, and you can have multiple attempts at the chapter exams if you have time. However, if you take your first attempt and you get above 70% on your first attempt, that's good enough. That means that you've understood most of the things in the chapter without too much of a problem. So if you're running against time, don't keep re-attempting those chapters. Also bear in mind that it takes the last score, not the highest score. However, I know what it's like as a student. You do half a dozen chapters and you get like 90% on them, and then all of a sudden you do a chapter and you get like 65. It doesn't look good on the old gradebook. In personal pride, you want to take that chapter again. So I know where you're going with that one. So to be passed as complete, you must complete at least 75%. Now that's interesting. I would aim to complete on this course all of them. You do not want to miss any chapters on this course. This is a technically demanding course. So forget the 75%. If I was you, do every chapter. Yep. Even if you don't get quite such a high passing score on some of them, don't miss out any chapters. Not on the CCNA CyberOps. Submit the course feedback. Complete the final exam at 70% or higher. Be offered a resit, one attempt. Goes up to 80% at that point. What we're talking about here is the theory final exam, and complete the skills-based assessment, and that's going to be using the Security Onion, and the information for that is in Andrew's Google Drive. The theory final exam itself, this is hard because it covers material from all of the chapters. It will generally consist of between 50 and 55 questions, and as I said, first attempt 70% or higher. If you need to do a resit, which we hope you won't, you'll need to get 80% or higher. You must have completed the course feedback, because if you've not completed the course feedback, then the final exam will not be unlocked. Cisco requirement. So what will we do? We will send you a weekly heartbeat email. We'll also look after any discussions. Now, what am I talking about discussions? In your class, on the left hand side, there will be a discussions tab, and in the discussions tab you can post questions and you can answer questions. I doubt there'll be very much, if anything, in it at the moment because the course is only just starting, but this is the place to post questions, answer questions, post anything interesting related to the course that you have that might be useful to other students. If you post a question in here, what we will do is we'll wait a short while to see if any other students can answer the question, because it's always useful if a student can answer another student's question. However, if there is a question that hangs around there a bit longer than it should do, unanswered, then we'll probably drop in and see if we can answer that one for you. So please make use of the discussions tab. Whatever you do, if you have any problems, please do not email Andrew Smith, Kevin Large, myself, or Jason Trott, because we have full-time jobs. We are volunteers. We've got 3 courses going at the moment with over 2,000 students on them, and we just simply won't have the time to answer individual emails from so many students. So if you've got a problem, drop it in the discussion forum, and we'll see what we can do from there. It's quite possible another student can actually give you an answer to it. Okay, nearing the end of the presentation now. What resources are available? Key primary resource is the online curriculum. We'll do the weekly webinars. They'll be every Monday at 8 o'clock. Generally run for about 1 hour. Packet Tracer, which is a Cisco Networking Academy student you'll have access to anyway. Oracle VirtualBox, essential for this course. That's a free download. The discussion forums, lab exercises. I showed you where to find the lab exercises in the online curriculum material. Just go to the course index and you'll find the lab exercises there. Kali Linux. Not only is the Kali Linux VM part of the course itself, but you could always download Kali Linux and burn it to a DVD or burn it to a USB stick and play with it there. Believe me, you could play with the software that's on Kali Linux for at least a couple of years and you still wouldn't have used all of it. Useful resources. Second user equipment can be handy. Well, that's probably a bit of a leftover from the CCNA 2 slides. True though, Second user resources can be handy. You can pick up cheap routers and cheap switches, although firewalls do tend to still be rather expensive. There are some great books out there, and by the way, anything you can do on a Linux VM you can pretty much do on a Raspberry Pi. So I've had students just for extra training, when I've been doing world skills training with my students on Linux, I've often had them making Raspberry Pis into VPN endpoints or firewalls and things like that. Please engage. You're part of a community. Join in with that community. Participate in class discussions. Tell us who you are. Share any geeky things that you think are fascinating. I always do. Do share if you're struggling. It's quite possible that another student can help you out. Any student can answer anything in the forum threads, but please be aware, Andrew, Jason, myself, we're all volunteers. We do have full-time jobs. Please be patient with us. We can't always answer a question instantly in the discussion forum, and like I say, please don't send us any emails, because you'll probably find they will probably not be answered. We just simply don't have time with classes of this size. Join in the community with Facebook. I've just taken a link from our CyberOps course. Literally all I've done there is I've just gone to the home page for the CyberOps, and I've just taken a link directly from the URL there. Okay, and you can bookmark that so as you can get back to the course nice and quick. Okay, definitely participate in class discussions. I think we've done that. You can share pretty much anything in those discussion forums, providing it's relevant, of course. There's the link, yeah. And okay, so what I'd like to say is thank you very much indeed. So, yeah, thank you very, very much indeed for joining us on this introductory session for the CCNA CyberOps. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty tired already. What we'll do is, actually, let me show you something. If you haven't seen it before, there you go. That's the one I'm looking for. Raspberry Pis. Yeah. So anything you can do in a VM, you can do on one of those. I will see you, or at least talk to you, next week on 16th of September at 8 o'clock, when we start Chapter 1 of the CCNA CyberOps, the Security Operations Center. I hope this introduction has been useful, and I will see you next Monday. Best wishes to everybody.